If you will join me in welcoming our first person, it is Yukie Ohta, who's the founder and director of the SoHo Memory Project. Would you welcome, please, Yukie? Thank you.
Well, Crosby Street, by day. By day, it's a industrial, loud, busy street with garbage trucks. It's the back door to Broadway and the back door to Lafayette.
And there's a certain crude, brutal beauty of the street, of the feeling that you're living in an industrial neighborhood, you know, where trucks and all this shit are dropping stuff all over.
Because your camera, the tape recorder, everything goes in the truck.
That was Crosby Street in 1975. I grew up in that building, and those were my downstairs neighbors. The sights, smells, and sounds in that clip perfectly evoke the way I sensed my city as a child. I wonder, however, how Jane Jacobs sensed her city, other than having her eyes on the street. I wonder what smells she associated with Greenwich Village, or Scranton, Pennsylvania, where she grew up. The sense of smell, after all, is linked closely to memory, more so than any of our other senses. It has the power to trigger recollections, especially childhood memories, because it is in early life when we smell many things for the first time. For some, the smell of fresh-cut grass reminds them of Dad mowing the backyard. For others, the smell of cookies reminds them of Sundays at home with Mom. For me, it's sawdust. I grew up in a loft in Soho, and my father was a carpenter. He had his wood shop in the middle of our house, so table saws, jigsaws, seesaws, chainsaws, you name a saw, we had it somewhere between the kitchen and the television. So whenever I smell sawdust, whether it's in an old school butcher shop or in a lumber yard, I'm reminded of my childhood home. The SoHo Memory Project Mobile Historical Society, which will be popping up all over Soho throughout 2016, asks visitors to use all 5 senses to experience the history of Soho. Using unconventional media, such as 3D printed miniatures, ViewMaster viewers, and a smell station, this mobile museum on wheels chronicles the evolution of the area that is now called Soho, from farmland to high-end retail hub. And it focuses on the decades between 1960 and 1980, when it was a vibrant artists' community. Visitors are encouraged to interact with this hands, eyes, ears, and nose on exhibit, taking away a multisensory impression of Soho history, as well as an understanding of the many ways in which Soho's cultural pioneers influenced the larger cultural landscape of New York City and perhaps the world. Visitors also have an opportunity to contribute to the exhibition by sharing memories about their own neighborhoods, to illustrate the many ways in which Soho is at once unique and also part of a panorama of worldwide communities. And of all the components of this many-faceted exhibition, I found that people are most curious about the smell station. When deciding what odors to include, I asked old friends what smells remind them of growing up in Soho, and I received a variety of responses that resulted in this olfactory map drawn by our collective memories. Some described the leather wholesalers on Spring Street. Others mentioned the cake smell from the industrial bakery on Prince. And many talked about the spicy smell from the pepper factory on Broome. The mere mention of a smell opened the floodgates of nostalgia as these Soho kids, who are now pushing 50, recalled vivid, odor-evoked, autobiographical memories. For example, my friend Zoe wrote to me, "We spent so much time playing in the streets of Soho. I remember climbing in a refrigerator box and rolling through the streets in it, and sword fighting with those cardboard tubes from the textile factories. We would wear garbage bags and have shaving cream fights, and put on our pajamas and run barefoot through the street after a rain." And I got all this from my asking if she remembered the Twinkie smell when you turn the corner at Wooster Street. The smell station is part of my exhibition's module on childhood. Children who grew up in Soho had the unique experience of having been born there. We didn't choose it, and we didn't know anything else. We didn't have any green space, so we learned to ride our bicycles in our vast open lofts. We often slept in our coats because the heat went off after business hours, and our toys consisted of whatever we could construct from the objects discarded by the local factories. So, good or bad, it was a singular upbringing with singular sights, smells, and sounds. So I'd like to think that Jane Jacobs would have approved of my smell station as a way of recording history, as a means of sensing my city. It is, after all, in part due to her that the SoHo Memory Project even exists today. Jacobs once wrote that new ideas must use old buildings. Well, this might as well have been the rallying cry of Soho pioneers who set the trend of adaptive reuse in New York City by converting old factories into artists' lofts and galleries. Jacobs is widely known as the person who saved Greenwich Village from the evil doings of Robert Moses. But what is often overlooked is she had a hand in saving Soho as well. Her joint committee to stop the Lower Manhattan Expressway, along with the Soho-based Artists Against the Expressway, was able to defeat Moses' plan for Lomex, an expressway that was to run the entire length of Broome Street. And if Moses and his cohorts had had their way, my exhibition would have a very different kind of smell station. So thank you, Jane Jacobs, for being such a visionary and for being an inspiration to all of us olfactorists and, of course, to all of us urbanists as well. Thank you very much.